Hello everyone! Now we are from group 5. We are going to present you our material about narrative text. But before we into the material, the first one I'd like to tell you our members in this group. The first one is Dinda Syukrina. The second one is Disya Emmeliya. The third is Erniwati Waruwu. And last but not least, Hasanatul Khairiah. Alright, now before I explain you more about this topic, I'd like to tell you about several points that we are going to discuss, or I'm going to explain you. The first one is we have to know about the definition of narrative text. The second one, what is the purpose of narrative text? The generic structure of narrative text, language features that can be used in narrative text, and how to write narrative text properly and really well. Alright, now, what is the definition of narrative text? So, narrative text is a text that tells a series of events chronologically, and it's generally written by the author's imagination. So, we can say that narrative text is not a real story. Alright, after know the definition of narrative text, the next that we are going to explain you is what is the purpose of narrative text. Of course, the purpose of narrative text is to entertain the readers, which is fiction or non-fiction. So, yeah. Alright, now the next is we have to know about what is the generic structures in narrative text. In generic structures of narrative text, there are 4. The first one is orientation, the second one is complication, the third is resolution, and the last but not least is reorientation. And we are going to discuss it, or I'm going to explain you one by one. Alright, the first one is orientation. So, orientations contains about the introductions of characteristic that and settings involved in the contents of the story that we are going to tell. Alright, the second one is complication. So, in complication is a paragraph that contains about the beginning of the problem that we are going to discuss in the text, and the storylines that contain is conflict, climax, and the last one is anticlimax. Okay, and the next is resolution. So, resolution contains about the end of the story, or it also contains about the conclusion of the story. And it also can contains with the solution of the problem that we have to discuss before. Alright, the last one of generic structure is reorientation. So, what is the contents of reorientation? Reorientation contains about how the final result of the characters in the story, or it also can be contains about the moral message of the story. Alright, after hearing or after see the general structures of narrative text, the next that I'm going to explain you is various types of narrative text. The first one, there is personal experience. The second one is there's fairy tale, legend, and myth. Alright, now I'm going to explain you about what is the language features that can be used in narrative text. The first one is focus on specific or individualized participants. The second one, the use of material process, or it can use action verbs, and the use of some behavioral and verbal process, the use of relational process and mental process, the use, and it use also past tense as a grammar, and it use the temporal conjunction and temporal circumstances. Now, I'd like to show you what is the example of narrative text, and you can see the example of narrative text beside me. Okay, you can see that this text is narrative text, and if you're curious about the text, you can to read this all. Yeah. Alright, for your information or for additional information, you know what? In narrative text, it has contains about several questions. The first one is what happened in the story? Who are the characters in the story? Where did the story happen? And when did the story happen? Alright, now that I'm going to tell you is some simple story methods that we can be used in narrative text. The first one, once upon a time, every day, one day, because of that, until, and finally. Alright everyone, I think that's all the material that I can explain to you, and I hope that you can understand well about this topic and forgive me for all of our mistakes, and thank you for your attention, and thank you for